Okay, this is the jig that I'm talking about that cuts the tails. And I guess I could start at the back side of it. I've got an area that marks the center line where the bit is perpendicular in the front to the front edge of the jig. Okay, and that's useful for putting in the exact radius that I need to cut for the small radius. This is just a knob for pushing it back and forth. It's riding on these two wheels down here that are kind of soft rubber, but not too soft. And it runs on this kind of hard Formica surface, a piece of scrap board that I had laying around. I have this fan here so that when I turn it on, it blows away all of the chips and keeps them from accumulating on this Formica surface, which was in the past when I started to do this. The wheels were riding on the chips and bumping up and down, and that was giving me an uneven and rough cut on my workpiece. Now the router basically sits on a platform that is suspended with T-nuts going through these four 3/8 inch, I believe it's 16 TPI or 18 TPI rods. These rods are fixed, and as they rotate, as the rods rotate on each of the four corners of this platform here, it will raise or lower it completely uniformly. So I can do that slowly with this crank here, but when I need to move it fast, going up and down the height of the workpiece, I can just use this drill and it'll move it up and down pretty fast. That saves a lot of time. This piece here, I'm going to change this into clear acrylic shatterproof plexiglass. That's out over this area so that I could look through it to see the workpiece. Right now it's just shielding me. It's a safety feature. I haven't had any problems, but I just don't want to be too exposed to the bit and the workpiece. These long pieces here house a little T-nut on the bottom which tightens down the router sled on these T-tracks that you see here and here. I'm not really using these stop blocks, which I have in the front and back of the router sled. They don't work too well. I got to redesign that. Now the other really important feature, since I have really fine up and down movement of the platform and thus the router bit, the other thing that's needed is a really accurate in and out movement along the axis of the bit, the longitudinal axis of the router bit. So that's accomplished with this rod, which is a 1/4-20. It's thread right through the bottom of the sled. And as I turn that rod using this knob, one turn gives me 0.05 inches, 20 turns gives me 1 inch, and it allows me really fine adjustment of the bit radius. So the first step is to set the bit radius for the inner part of the socket, which is this part right here. So I measure it with the calipers, and then I take it over to the ruler and get the exact measurement, which is usually about 2 3/8 is what I strive for. And then the radius of that would be 1 3/16. So to get that, I take a piece of wood that's flat, I put it here, I put a ruler on top of here, and a tri-square that goes right even with the midpoint of the pivot point bolt on the sled housing unit that pivots back and forth. Then I take the ruler and I measure the distance from this vertical square to the tip of the bit. And I can adjust that to pretty much within a 32nd of an inch. 64th of an inch I wouldn't vouch for, but I can get an accurate radius with that. And that basically gives me this cut right here. Then, as I was saying before, once I set the radius, I'll sneak up on my cut line, my first cut line, by moving the board back and forth. The radius is always going to be the same, and I cut this inner radius. Then, very importantly, the next step is to take the knob in the back and move it, leaving the board, change the radius while leaving the board stationary. So first I'm moving the board to get the small radius, but then I'm leaving it stationary and moving the bit out to the next cut line and sneaking up on that cut line to get the outer radius. So that's how I set the outer radius. And that basically corresponds to this outer part of the joint of the dovetail. And that's basically how I cut these dovetails. And you could see, you know, it leads to pretty accurate joinery here. This is a walnut and maple chair that I'm building. And you could see the inner radius right here, and then the outer radius here. So you could see that those match really well. And when I get these 4 joints all put together and spin them into place, I'm able to adjust these angles really accurately, and I have a jig for that as well. And so then I'll start to cut out the shape of the stretchers, which come curved here, and then they're curved here. And they end up being a pretty complex shape by the time I'm done. I need it squared up to cut the joints. And then once it's all squared up, I'm able to start to cut out the shape. And then that leads to the next step of the chairs. Once that's all done, I'll start to build the backrest. And those are sitting here with the zigzag joints and the coopered backrests, which have a long ways to go, but they're starting to take shape. Thanks for listening. Contact me with any questions.